Hello and welcome back to our study of the book of Revelation. Today we're in chapter 18. Last week in chapter 17 we got a look at Babylon the great prostitute, the mother of all prostitutes and of all abominations on the earth. But we were promised by the angel that we were going to see the punishment brought upon her. Yet we didn't see it in chapter 17. But now that we have seen Babylon for what it is, with all of its glamour and luxury and comfort, and seems like they have lots of power and just very invested in living well and prospering. Now we see something else. I'm going to read this by sections. Starting in chapter 18 verse 1, it says, "After this I saw another angel coming down from heaven. He had great authority, and the earth was illuminated by his splendor. With a mighty voice he shouted, 'Fallen! Fallen is Babylon the Great! She has become a home for demons and a haunt for every evil spirit, a haunt for every unclean and detestable bird. For all the nations have drunk the maddening wine of her adulteries. The kings of the earth have committed adultery with her, and the merchants of the earth grew rich from her excessive luxuries.'" So what's happened? Babylon was this great and powerful city with all this prosperity, but now this angel has appeared and has made this declaration. And it says this angel is an angel with great authority, and he has so much splendor that he illuminates the whole earth. In other words, this angel is recognized and seen by the earth and has authority. And what does he declare? Declares that Babylon the Great has fallen, and now she has become a home for demons and every evil spirit. So there's nothing good left in Babylon. She is filled with demons and detestable things. And why has this happened? It has happened because she has led the world in rejecting God and choosing sin. Right? It says all the nations have drunk the maddening wine of her adulteries. The kings of the earth have committed adultery with her, and the merchants of the earth grew rich from her excessive luxuries. So there is a warning here about materialism that we need to take into account. Part of what is so evil about Babylon is that it is extremely materialistic. And we might like to think that we aren't materialistic, but I want to tell you something. If you are listening to this and you live in the United States or in Europe, you are among the richest people ever to live in the history of the world. And even if you aren't here in the US, maybe you're somewhere else, and maybe you would say, "Well, I'm poor." You are still richer than almost everyone in the history of the world. The fact that you are watching this video using a phone or a computer that costs hundreds of dollars, the fact that you have a roof over your head and air conditioning, the fact that you have food to eat, these make you richer than the majority of people through all of history. It used to be that like 50% of the world lived on less than $2 a day. That's actually changed. That's less now. I don't know the exact number, but the point is we today, all over the world, are richer than we have ever been. And so there is a warning here about materialism. Now, this doesn't mean that you shouldn't have a house or you shouldn't have air conditioning. But what are these things? Do they have you? Do these things own you? Are you living your life for material possessions? Are you concerned and consumed with making more money to have something that you want, that you think makes your life more fulfilled? This is a warning about that, because it will lead us to all kinds of adulteries, whereas with our spiritual lives, we have to be focused and dedicated to God and not to comforts and luxuries. So then we get to the next section. He says, Then I heard another voice from heaven say, "Come out of her, my people, so that you will not share in her sins, so that you will not receive any of her plagues. For her sins are piled up to the heavens, and God has remembered her crimes. Give back to her as she has given. Pay her back double for what she has done. Mix her a double portion of her own cup. Give her as much torture and grief as the glory and luxury she gave herself. If, or in her heart she boasts, I sit as a queen, I am not a widow, and I will never mourn. Therefore, in one day, her plagues will overtake her, death, mourning, and famine. She will be consumed by fire, for mighty is the Lord God who judges her." So in this next section, we have a heavenly voice calling out to God's people to come out of Babylon. Come out, because the time of judgment is at its peak. And this reminds me of Lot in the Old Testament, who lived in Sodom, and the angels came and said, "Sodom, it's time to get out. God's judgment is coming." It makes me think that there is a time for faithful witness, but then there is also a time when God's people are supposed to come out and allow God's judgment to come. Now, how do you know? You got to have a voice from heaven. You had an angel coming to Lot. Here you have a voice from heaven. Right now, we are called to faithful witness, but there will come a time when he says it's time to come out. It's also a call for holiness, to be set apart, to be living in Babylon, to be living in the world, but not to be of the world, to use Jesus' term. And holiness means set apart. Therefore, this is a calling for us as God's people to set ourselves apart from the world. Our lives should be different. We should live a life that is recognizably different from the world around us. So, what about God's judgment? It is righteous. God has remembered her crimes, he says. And Babylon is still boasting against God, saying, "Oh, I'm not a widow, I'm never going to mourn." But then his judgment is coming, and his judgment is good, his judgment is holy, his judgment is just. So now we get to the next section, which is a series of funeral songs. It says, starting in verse 9, "When the kings of the earth who committed adultery with her and shared her luxury see the smoke of her burning, they will weep and mourn over her. Terrified at her torment, they will stand far off and cry, 'Woe, woe, O great city, O Babylon, city of power! In 1 hour your doom has come.' The merchants of the earth will weep and mourn over her, because no one buys their cargoes anymore. Cargoes of gold, silver, precious stones and pearls, fine linen, purple, silk, and scarlet cloth, every sort of citron wood, and articles of every kind made of ivory, costly wood, bronze, iron, and marble, cargoes of cinnamon and spice, of incense, myrrh, and frankincense, of wine and olive oil, of fine flour and wheat, cattle and sheep, horses and carriages, and bodies and souls of men." They were buying slaves there, by the way. That's the last one, seems to be the worst. People say the Bible doesn't talk about slavery, that the Bible actually endorses slavery. I think when you look at the Bible, it doesn't endorse slavery. And in fact, here, Babylon is being condemned for its love of luxury, its materialism, but also for its buying and selling the bodies and souls of men. Clearly, selling the bodies and souls of men is not something that God looks favorably on. Just pointing that out. They will say, "The fruit you long for is gone from you. All your riches and splendor have vanished, never to be recovered. The merchants who sold these things and gained their wealth from her will stand far off, terrified at her torment. They will weep and mourn and cry out, 'Woe, woe, O great city, dressed in fine linen, purple and scarlet, and glittering with gold, precious stones, and pearls. In 1 hour, such great wealth has been brought to ruin. And every sea captain and all who travel by ship, the sailors and all who earn their living from the sea, will stand far off. When they see the smoke of her burning, they will exclaim, was there ever a city like this great city? They will throw dust on their heads, and with weeping and mourning cry out, woe, woe, O great city, where all who had ships on the sea became rich through her wealth. In 1 hour she has been brought to ruin. Rejoice, O heaven. Rejoice, saints and apostles and prophets. God has judged her for the way she treated you. So in this section we saw 3 different groups singing funeral songs for Babylon. We see the kings who depended on Babylon for power, and now they are terrified at her ruin. The merchants who depended on Babylon for their economic benefit. There's no one there to buy what they sell. All of her luxuries we saw, all of her comfort, they're being brought to nothing. And then we have the sea captains, the sailors, and those who depend on the sea. They depended on Babylon for trade, and they will weep. And so we see an interesting repetition between the 3. They all start with, woe, 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 O great city. And then they all say, in 1 hour, such great wealth has been brought to ruin, or in 1 hour, she has been brought to ruin, or in 1 hour, your doom has come. So they have this similar song, and then they have different things. But the sea captains and the sailors, interestingly, the second part of their song is a turn towards the church in verse 20, where it says, rejoice over her, O heaven. Now heaven gets to rejoice over Babylon, because now Babylon has been brought down. Now Babylon's power is broken. Now Babylon has been judged. Rejoice over her, O heaven. Rejoice, saints and apostles and prophets. God has judged her for the way she treated you. So it's a call now for God's people to rejoice at his judgment brought on Babylon. Now, this isn't a vindictive rejoicing like trying to get revenge on your great enemy. Rather, it's rejoicing that God has brought justice, that God has heard our cry for justice, and that his judgment on the world is right, and we should celebrate God's right judgment, and we must rejoice when he does these things. Then a mighty angel picked up a boulder the size of a large millstone and threw it into the sea, and said, with such violence the great city of Babylon will be thrown down, never to be found again. The music of harpists and musicians, flute players and trumpeters, will never be heard in you again. No workman of any trade will ever be found in you again. The sound of a millstone will never be heard in you again. The light of a lamp will never shine in you again. The voice of bridegroom and bride will never be heard in you again. Your merchants were the world's great men, and by your magic spell all the nations were led astray. In her was found the blood of the prophets and of the saints, and of all who have been killed on the earth. This is a final, complete judgment. There's no light, there's no music, there's no joy, there's no celebration. Babylon is gone. Why? Because in her was found the blood of the prophets and of the saints. God is going to judge. God is going to do right. And this is the final scene of the chapter, which has the angel throwing a millstone into the sea. And this reminds us of Jesus when he talked about the children. When they didn't want the children to come to him, Jesus said, let the little children come unto me. And then he gave a warning. He said, if anyone causes a little one such as these to stumble, let a millstone be tied around their neck and let them be thrown into the sea. So this is an image that Jesus used for God's judgment on those who, in this case, or in Jesus' case, is that they cause children to to fall away, Babylon is being judged with the same judgment for causing the world to turn away from God, to stumble, to trip up. So this echoes the words of Jesus. So what's going to happen here? God is going to bring Babylon down, completely ridding the world of Babylon's evil. God is going to wipe it from the earth. Why? This has to happen so that Jerusalem can come, the New Jerusalem, so that the bride has a pure dwelling place. Babylon has done evil. It has persecuted God's people. Now God is bringing it to justice, and we are called to rejoice and celebrate that justice and recognize that this justice is coming because God has something else in store for us that is far better. God bless you. Thank you for listening today to this discussion of Revelation 18. I hope you've been enjoying these videos. I will see you next week. God bless you.